Let's get into the pillars of longevity. At Technogym, we speak of the 3 pillars of longevity, kind of how we view the 3 sides of a pyramid. Now, I know you share this same view. What are your thoughts on this?
The concept of wellness is much like the 3 parts of a triangle: mental wellness, nutritional wellness, and physical wellness. Each of these things is really important, and I love the idea of a pyramid, because if each of these arms of the pyramid is not really looked after and cared for, that pyramid will fall. So you have to think about wellness in totality, not just exercise, not just mental wellness, not just nutritional wellness, but how all of these factors interrelate. And I think the most interesting thing about this is the concept of oxidative stress. What the heck is that? The idea is that with unhealthy lifestyle, things like drinking too much, not sleeping, smoking, eating really bad processed foods all the time, you end up making free radicals. And these free radicals circulate in your blood, and they are damaging to the cells of your body, to your tissues. And the idea is that if you have a big load of free radicals, you are much more likely to have heart disease, diabetes, premature aging. So if we want to talk about longevity, we want to talk about how we maximize our ability to clear free radicals and how we prevent them from happening in the first place. Everybody gets them, but how do we make sure we don't get them over time? That's really, really important. Now, one way we think about this is through regular exercise and a healthy lifestyle. So things like getting good sleep, getting good hydration, getting good exercise, building our muscles and making those myokines work. Interleukin-6 I mentioned before as a really important anti-inflammatory that comes with strengthening. All these are great ways to help reduce free radicals. Importantly, all of these things can contribute to stress reduction. Less stress, healthier lifestyle, more longevity. I think it's all important. Now, much of this gets to something called a telomere. So telomeres are like the plastic tips at the end of your shoelace. If you're tying your shoes, you know that if you have plenty of plastic tip, it ties without a problem. But if that plastic tip at the end of the shoelace wears down, that shoelace starts to fray and degrade. And telomeres are essentially the tips at the end of your chromosomes. And as you age, those telomeres get shorter and shorter until they're gone, like the end of the plastic on the shoelace, and that cell dies. So cell death is related to telomeric length. Now, that's not an unavoidable process. If you take good care of your body, if you think about the things we're going to talk about today, things like exercise and getting good nutrition and getting good sleep and stress reduction, all those things can contribute to telomere lengthening, telomere longevity, and your longevity. So the name of the game is, how do I keep myself as healthy for as long as possible?
So is telomere length the ultimate measure of one's age? And if so, how can we measure it?
Now, telomere length is one of the markers we use. I think one interesting thing also to mention, Deena, is that the CDC put out guidelines of what makes people healthy, and they estimated that 20% of health came from genetics. 20% of health came with the interface with the medical system, and 60% of health came from your lifestyle choices.
Wow.
It's great news. What that means is that the choices we make every day really determine the kind of life we're going to have, including things like the length of our telomeres. So there's a lot in there about what we can do to make ourselves healthy and keep ourselves healthy. And if you're somebody that wants information, some people are like, listen, I know what I'm doing. I don't want to know how long my telomeres are. But some people really want to know. And if you do want to know, increasingly, we have genetic testing, including telomeric testing, where you can basically give a drop of blood or even saliva, and you can get an idea of this value among others. So I think it's really interesting, something to put a pin in. I'm sure we'll come back to later, 10, 15 years, we'll have a different discussion. But I think it's all part of this equation of the ways people are assessing where they are in their own longevity and what they can do to make that the best it can possibly be.
There's so many ways to assess where we are and what our future is going to look like. So I'm sure the audience will be very happy to know that 60% of it is in their control. The majority of it is in their control. So that's incredible.
That's why we're here. I mean, that's why we're talking about this. That's why we're stressing this, because people think, it's just, just happened, it's genetics, and that may be part of it. But I want people to know that there's so much they can do to affect their health. And I really want to highlight this point. that our medical system, as it's presently constructed, is a lot about taking care of the problem after it has happened. I want people to know that they can prevent the disease, significantly reduce the risk of that disease happening, and treat the disease while they have it if they pay attention to the things we're talking about.
Prevention is better than cure.
Absolutely.